Hello there, guys. Welcome to Angels of Death. We've got another episode, and today I'm joined by Rob. And yes, he is a Drakari main, but he's not just a Drakari main. He's also secretly a Space Marines main when he wants to be.
They're Dark Angels, so they're still a little bit edgy, so it's all right.
Yeah, but the thing is, Rob, well, we'll get to what you've been running in a minute, but they're not Dark Angels, right? So that's the exciting bit, right? We're actually doing a video that's not about some sort of Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Dark Angels thing. That's why it's under the Angels of Death moniker. So it's Ravenguard, right? Because that was Shrike I saw lurking in the shadows, right?
It is Ravenguard, and it's
Nice.
in a Vanguard spearhead, so it's very exciting.
As the Emperor intended, right?
As the world should be, yes.
Yeah. So how are you otherwise, mate?
Yeah, really good. Getting back on the hobby horse, had a bit of time off over Chrissy, and just
nice.
enjoying stuff. I've painted up. Yesterday I got my gladiators done, so I've got 3 gladiators now, all magnetized up, so I can run them any way or as impulsors. So
until you need 2 of each in a list,
and then I'm going to get another one, and we're going to get to ITT. I'm going to have to then have 6 of them because I want Reapers as well, and Lancers and impulsors.
Yeah, but oddly, not the 3rd gladiator that I can't even remember the name of. That's how
the Melter one
is. The other one, yeah. Right. So let's go to your slides, I guess, because you've gone to an event as Ravenguard, right?
I did. So I went to Warhammer World a couple of weekends ago and decided that I wanted to take something a bit different. Didn't want my Drakari, wanted a bit of a change, and had a look through the Space Marine Codex and thought Ravenguard Spearhead looks great. It's got some jank, it's got fast movement, it's got ways to control the movement phase, and I thought it was great. So yeah, we'll just go through the slides, I guess. So the Vanguard Spearhead, its trait, it gives a -1 to hit and cover if you're outside of 12, which makes early engagements actually really tricky. So things like ballistices and things absolutely love 2-up save with T10 and a bunch of wounds. It's nice. It just makes them really hard to deal with. For the strats, there is infantry can sticky and sabotage objectives for a CP. That's in either player's command phase as well.
So good.
So you can just dump something on an objective, sticky it, and then, well, just below, there's a reactive move in the charge phase. So if they come towards you and want to charge off the objective, you just run away.
And if they're not on the objective, then they're not taking it off of you. Fantastic, keep it, right? Yeah.
Yep. If it's 1 wound MSU stuff trying to come on, they get hit by D3 mortal wounds. From the sabotage objective. It's great fun. We have a end of turn redeploy stratagem for 1 CP as well. You can do this with 2 Phobos units, which I think I did once the entire event, or 1 unit of anything else, including things with deep strike and lots of shots.
It's Phobos and Scout, isn't it?
Phobos and Scout gives you 2, otherwise it's just 1. Yeah. And there's a strat for +1 to hit and +1 AP on your infantry shooting targets outside of 12. So this combined with oaths can make things punch up so much harder than they should.
Exactly that. So that's, I guess, for things like you had mentioned before, your Ballistus Dreadnoughts or a Gladiator Lancer or Reaper type of thing, I suppose.
It is infantry lock, so you do.
Infantry. I'm being blind. Yeah.
I did get excited when I first read it. I was like, oh my god, a Reaper's going to be amazing. Stern Guard, it could be.
Hellblasters. Centurions, I suppose.
Centurions.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So there's a nice selection there that you can kind of use it
definitely
for, I
is.
suppose.
And it can even make late game your basic bolt guns actually punch up when you're hitting on 2s with +1 to wounds, re-rolling, and AP2. It can make things like just a basic intercessor actually hit really hard.
Yeah, and they get extra shots these days. So if they're shooting all at the same target, that's 4 shots each. So that's
it's 20 shots.
20 attacks for 5. That's great value.
Yeah. And the other thing in the detachment, you get a lone op enhancement.
Yes.
Which is absolutely so amazing.
Because that's a big challenge for Space Marines, that they've only got 1 lone op character that isn't through being next to things. Yeah. And that's the Combat Lieutenant, which is great, don't get me wrong. But this being able to be given to something like a Jump Pack Captain or any character, full stop, really, is pretty fun, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I think my first iteration of this list actually had 4 lone ops in it, which was fun.
Nice. Nice.
So I've learnt heavily into the Ravenguard theme.
Wow, as you should. Right, yes. Next slide, I guess.
Cool. So Shrike. Shrike
Nice.
is leading the force because he should be, because it is Vanguard. Basically, the way that I saw him, he is a Caladius assassin that gives OC2 to my jump pack intercessors. He doesn't have the Vectora, but he does the same as a Caladius assassin, going up and down. He punches quite a bit harder, so he's got 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, twin linked, so he can pretty reliably pick up 5-man, 2 wound units.
Nice.
And the uppy downy just lets him score. I use him as a scoring piece effectively most games.
Nice. So you didn't have him leading stuff. He was just
No.
doing things. Yeah.
So you can attach him to jump pack intercessors.
Yeah.
And it gives the whole unit loan up. But I wanted
Nice.
more units for scoring. In all
And
but one game, I think.
And the JPIs, when they're not led by him, still get the OC, right?
Yes.
That's the big thing. Yeah.
Even if he's dead, it's just when you build your army
in the formation. Yeah, that's really cool. I think.
So it's not like you have to sit him back and hold to keep your OC2. You can actually throw him away if you want to.
Nice.
Right, cool. Next slide. So the list. So Shrike, as we said, headed up. He is my lone up uppy downy scoring piece who can go Barney if he wants to. The jump pack captain with Ghostweave Cloak. So the Ghostweave Cloak gives him lone up. I think all but one game I had him running solo, and he was an absolute monster. So he can punch really well, and he can uppy downy as well. So you can have Shrike and the captain uppy downy, so he gets the free strat if you don't need your other things to go up and down. He can free sticky your home objective turn 1.
So handy.
If you're next to something that gives you CP farming, so in here I have an impulsor with comms array. So that would be a free CP on a 5-up if I use a strat near it. So I was constantly just hitting the free strat right next to the impulsor just to try get that extra CP.
Nice.
Yeah, I figured
as real at home.
as real at home. There's a lot of things here that it's not quite as good, but it does the job.
Yeah.
I was looking at the impulsor and I was like, well, do I take a shield dome?
Normally that's the default, right?
That was the default. Then I kind of thought about it, and with the detachment rule of always having cover, and you need AP4 to put him on worse than a 5-up anyway. And if someone's shooting AP4 at my impulsor, I don't care. Because it's not going into my dreadnoughts.
Yeah,
it's not going into my lancer.
Yeah.
And you need AP3 in melee. And what has AP3? If they're putting AP3 into an impulsor, I'm more than happy. So I only got a few CP from it, but in one of my games in particular, it turned a very close game into a landslide effectively.
That's fantastic.
Next in the list, we had a Judicia with 5 assault intercessors. His job is just to screen my army because I'm very shooty. I don't want people running at me. He's just a first heroic intervention threat just to stop people from running at me. A combi lieutenant just to forward deploy, and he was just fine. He just did his job of a lone op, scored some points, and did some screening early game.
Yeah.
Then we had 3x5 jump pack assault intercessors. So these guys were the OC2. These were the kind of the workhorses of the list, just to effectively force engagements and deny primary.
Nice.
Then we had 2 Ballistus Dreadnoughts who you don't, let's be honest, anyone who's played a Ballistus, you don't take them for their damage output. They do nothing in shooting a lot of the time, but they are tough as nails, and they're OC4, and they just force people to do things.
It keeps people honest, right? It stops them going places where, in theory, they will survive. But it's the fear.
Why not? You've got 4 anti-tank shots, and when you've got Oath on something and +1 to wound, 4 anti-tank shots and +1 to wound, you know what? It might just one-shot anything. Then we had a Lancer sitting behind. So that's job was to effectively support the Ballistuses to actually make their damage scary.
Yeah.
Then we had a squad of 1x6 Inceptors with the Assault Bolters. So this was purely a pick based on the strat that we talked about earlier, right from the shadows. So these guys shooting something into Oath with +1 to hit and +1 AP suddenly turns into, I think it maths out to like mid-20s in the hits. Then you've got Strength 5, +1 to wound, re-rolling at AP2. In one of the games, they did 16 wounds to a Rogal Dawn. This anti.
That's the gun that I think of when I think of taking out Rogal Dawns.
That's
yeah.
it. They can just absolutely pop off, and they're pretty reliable if you have your oath target, your oath target, and that strat. The one thing they do struggle with is if things are in cover, because you lose the AP.
Yep.
2-up saves in cover, they fall over, but everything else they absolutely mince. Then we had some Plasma Scepters, 2 squads of 3.
Nice.
Some Incursors, who were absolutely amazing. Some Infiltrators, standard to stand in my backfield. Some Reavers, and some Scouts. I took the Reavers because they were a fun choice, and I just painted some, and they seemed really cool.
Yeah.
That's the list. So very, very much MSUE and go and do things and force engagements.
Yeah. Right. There we go. Designing the list then.
Yeah, so designing the list. So, like I said, the list plans to control engagements through lone ops, sticky, and reactive moves. So I would throw either lone ops or things I don't really care about out into the center and force people to come and fight me. I've got my sticky objectives. I've got my reactive move when they charge. So hopefully I can do it multiple times with the same unit. And then pull them into my fire lines and pick them off one piece at a time. Overloading one part of the board, so the uppy downy strat with the Inceptors, the Bolt Inceptors particularly, lets me just completely swing all my damage to one part of the board and just do that thing where you hold just enough on one side and just work your way from one side to the other. And the OC2 jump back intercessors really let you do that because you can just deny primary so efficiently.
Yeah. And this was on GW terrain, which has got quite a lot of open.
It had
middle objectives, right?
Yeah, it had very big open line of sight on the middle objectives, which is why the Lancer was in the list. Yep. Originally, I didn't have it, but the Lancer just really kept people honest and gave some reliable damage output. And you can get good angles on the GW terrain because not like UKTC where they're solid walls, you can just drive onto the terrain and poke your nose out.
Yeah. Very telling.
Yes. So when I was designing the list, I looked at the Space Marine Codex, and if you're not a successor, your melee sucks. It's so average, I think.
Yes.
I thought, what does a similar role? Dudes with plasma that drop 6 inches away and just shoot you so you don't have to worry about interrupts was kind of my answer to that.
Yeah.
It works on GW terrain. Don't know if it'll translate to UKTC, but it really worked. It just kept people honest, and if they wanted to screen their staging units, they had to put other units back there, which opened up other angles. So it felt like a good melee alternative. And they didn't all die when I shot them at all. I think I only lost a couple. I didn't just magically lose a unit after doing no damage, which is what they usually do, isn't it?
That's normally for me. I'm like, oh, cool, 3 of them are shooting, and oh, look, 2 are now dead.
2 are dead.
And you've saved them all. That's even better. So I've lost more than I've killed. This is fantastic.
The Inceptors, they were the hammer, so they were my damage-dealing units.
Nice.
The Impulsor with the CP farm, and then later game just to run forward and say, you have to deal with this because it's OC2 on a point. And the Judicia just keeping everything honest.
Yeah. And did you find pairing up the Judicia and his Assault Intercessors on the objective that you've got reroll 1s to wound did anything? Or was that a weird situation that didn't really come up?
It didn't come up because I was very aggressive with my Combi Lieutenant almost every game.
Fair enough.
I found in the 2 games I had before the event and the first couple of games, I just forgot about his reroll 1s until like turn 2. But it was okay because I
started putting a token down for it because it's the one that I always kept forgetting. I was like, that is so, especially if you like put it as the center and you're like, and I'm going to put a bunch of melee onto that, and then you forget until the end of the game. You're like, that might have helped when I didn't spike.
I think it was turn 3 into Custodes. I looked at an objective. I had 3 different markers on it because I had it sticky, I had it sabotaged, I had the reroll 1s on it. I think there was something else. I was just like, there's so much admin here, and this is meant to be a simple list.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
fantastic.
Good fun. Yeah. All right, so the event. So like we said, it's just a 5-round GT at Warhammer World. They use GW terrain. They just use the GW companion mission packs. They're randomly picked. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, just kind of the gist of how each game went and how I felt that each of them went. So first up, I had guard. It was against one of the Warhammer TV painters. He had an absolutely
fantastic.
like his guard army was amazing. I was looking at it, I was like, is that writing on the side? There's some really nice decals. And I looked at it closer. I'm like, oh my god, they're all freehand.
Oh no!
But yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Really nice. This is the guy whose Rogadorn got one tapped though by 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 some Inceptors with bolt guns. Effectively, I could control the board. He didn't leave his quarter of the board really. Just scouts coming up, tagging things. I think I went first, so I could tag things so he couldn't come out. Put 2 ballistices out so he could shoot his AP1 shooting at me, which just bounced. So then I could get shots on his things. It was just I could control the game because he couldn't leave his deployment zone to score, and I just could. I could do whatever I wanted on the outside objectives.
That felt like what the list could do quite well would be to kind of just cage people in and just, even though if they could kill it, they'd kill it too slow, and if they blew out one side, you could redeploy and cover it back up.
That's it. You can just plug the holes with the uppy downy strats and things in strat reserve. That was a good game. It was a good feel because I really felt that the list was lacking anti-armor. I know it's got a Lancer in it, but apart from that, I thought it was lacking. But he had 4 battle tanks, 2 chimeras, and a Dawn, and I tabled him. And it's just saying what the +1 wound with Oath actually gives you when you've got a lot of twin linked around.
It changes that dynamic massively, right?
Yeah, it just means anything can punch up. Yeah,
nice.
Cool. So yes, that was a big win. Then I went to Chaos Knights on Purge, which wasn't worrying at all, especially since I went first. So it was a lovely game. We had a nice chat. The guy we went to the table. He was just a really nice guy. His whole army was converted from trolls.
Nice.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So like the Fellwater Troggoths and stuff.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
The Rock Guts. Oh, nice.
When you go to a table and you have a chat with the guy and you're like, this is going to be a nice game. He was just like, yeah, everything's intent. We talked things out. We got halfway through deployment. He went first and I went, what's the mission rule? Went, actually, you can bring in a war dog here. Turn 1, because it was the... so he's like, do you want to rearrange stuff? Did you do anything different? Yeah. I was like, no, we didn't do it, so... He did that and it absolutely whiffed and he just lost it for free. So it was actually mind games. It was actually shadowy mind games.
Oh no!
This game I looked at the mission and I started everything on the board because I saw this and went, if he rushes me and I go
he could
second,
right?
I just lose. So he came very aggressively and he got kill more I think almost every turn. But I got a couple of hold mores. Yeah, I got a couple of hold mores. Just because I was able to screen with my forward deploys and just tagging stuff and just screening off my safe objective.
Yeah.
And sticky objectives were quite difficult for him to deal with when had move blocks up. But again, he had 1 knight at the end, so I thought I would struggle into armor, and then tabled a knight player who had 1 big knight and 13 small knights. So it was 11 or 13.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. Judicia went absolutely ham as well. Nice. I think he chopped 2 small knights in half because they were just on the middle objective. So yeah, it was.
Did the Incursor Mine do anything in that game?
The Incursor Mine did. I completely forgot about it though, so I had to use it the phase after he fought on death to kill my captain. So there's definitely times I set it all up in my movement phase,
perfect.
and then forgot about it until the morale phase after it killed everyone on fight on death, which was quite funny. There was definitely a lot of learning on my part because I'd only had I think three games with iterations of this list.
Even with quite a simple army on paper, there's still a lot of moving parts, especially when you're having to look about picking stuff up and where it can be to be picked up. And that's a lot.
There's a lot of options, but it was I felt like I played that well from the macro point. Just got some micro things wrong.
Yeah.
Then we had Custodes. I played our very own Joe.
Mr. Reed.
Custodes, yes. So he had the new hotness, the Grotmas detachment, and he had blocks of 3 bikes.
Oh, yes. A lot of bikes.
A lot of bikes. So I went first. I pushed some scouts out to say you have to deal with these. So he had to come out with things to actually deal with scouts to give me some targets. And he came forward with one of his blocks of bikes, and we realized at the end of his turn that he left a hole for my bolt scepters to come in.
Oh, no.
So the bolt scepters picked up 2 bikes and left the last one on 1 wound on their 1 activation. And at that point, he had nothing to push onto that flank, so they just caused absolute mayhem on one side.
Gosh.
Yeah. So they were really good. I could just pick the engagements. He got a good rapid ingress with his other bike squad, which pushed into my home objective. But this list, what it can actually do is when you are pushed, you can collapse in on yourself. So I had almost my entire army back onto my home field to clear these bikes. But it didn't affect my forward play because there's so much speed into the jump pack interceptors,
You almost rubber band
redeploys.
yourself, right?
Yeah. So he had his bikes on my deployment zone. I pulled everything back. This is where I got my free CP from my impulsor. So those
Nice.
bikes back there, I had 1 CP. Then I had my Captain throw a free grenade, which I got
Nice.
a CP for, which let me do a tank shonk with my Lancer, which is what finished his jetbike captain off.
Nice.
So
So a lot of mortal wounds doing the kind of the work there.
yeah, so I threw in cursor mines at them. I threw a whole heap of stuff. There was plasma shot at them, and there was the Lord left on 1 wound, I think, and the tank shock finished him off.
Nice.
So it is expensive. You need to plan your CP with this list, but you can just absolutely focus on things on one part of the board while you're still defending other areas. So that was a really good game. The Judicia was probably man of the match because he just stood an inch away from a wall towards the middle, looking at some wardens, saying, "If you come at me, I'm going to kill half of you." And it was he just gave that unit just gave me breathing space while I dealt with all the bikes.
Because it's not necessarily the output in actual reality for a fight first unit. It's more the presence of it. People are like, I have to know I'm going to be able to survive it and then hit back with what survives, and not always.
And that's the things with the wardens is sure, like you can go into me and you will survive if you use your 4-up feel no pain.
Yeah, and
if you use it, then you don't have it against all my shooting. It's going to come into you next turn. It just gives me that multi-phase.
And then all that plasma comes down.
All that sweet plasma. Cool. So that was day 1. I finished 3-0, which I was absolutely stoked with. I didn't think I'd do any of that. And then I drew Ret Cadre, Tau, which was all suits. And it was on Lynchpin, I think it was. And I went first. So if anyone knows Lynchpin, you score a whole heap of primary. You don't score any primary during the game. And you score a whole heap if you go second at the end.
Yeah.
So I went first and I had to push into a Tau gun line, which was absolutely terrifying. But again, look, it was a 3-point loss in the end.
That's respectable.
Yeah, and he came out with his fusion squads first with the Invuns, and he spiked on some Invuns early, and I just didn't quite kill the suits fast enough.
That's a shame.
Really close. We were looking at it when we got to turn 5. We had to quickly play the last turn, and it came down to cards. I think I missed. I think I drew 2 cards. I could get a 3, couldn't get the other one and redrew it into nothing, and then he got an 11-point secondary turn or something like that.
Oh gosh! And then scoring at the end
and then scored at the end. So it was really close, and then cards just decided the last bit. But I think the list did really well, especially like I said, considering that I don't do well into vehicles. I thought, but it's apparently not the case.
And that seems like that's what you went into mostly.
That's all I hit, and I did all right.
That is the way it goes.
Yeah. And then last, I hit Stu, who I always, every time I go to Warhammer World, I play Stu either round 4 or round 5. It's just tradition.
Oh, tradition. Nice.
I think we've done it about 5 times now.
Yeah. What's the matchup so far? Is it like even between the two of you, or is it?
It's always 1 point in it. I think we're about even at the moment. I think we're 2 wins each and a draw or something like that is very close. So he was running the new hotness, which was the Slanesh Demons. So I backlined my entire army. He ran at me. I misplayed some of my sequencing for the pass-off mortals.
Yep.
But I feel like if I played this match again, I think I could win it, because you do have the focus fire in certain parts of the board, and with the reactive moves. So what Slaanesh want to do? They want to come at you, charge a unit, and swing the rest of the unit into other things to shut you down.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work against the Vanguard Spearhead, because they go, I'm going to charge this unit, and you just reactive move 6 inches towards them. So they can't swing into your army.
And they're just in isolation, yeah.
Yeah, and they have to kill that unit, so they can't wrap you to stop you from desperate bakeouting or anything. And it has all the tools to do it. And unfortunately, we only got to the end of turn 3 because we were just having such a nice game.
Oh.
So
I was wondering why the scores were the way they were, but that makes sense.
I was effectively tabled at the end of it, but there was a swing turn where it could have gone the other way, and I could have tabled him.
Nice.
So it was a loss to demons. It's the new hotness, and it felt like it had game into it. I just executed it slightly wrong, and Stu played it really well.
Nice.
Yeah. And again, bolt scepters with +1 to wound into invons. You don't care about the AP, so it was just absolutely mincing everything it looked at.
And force as many saves as possible, and they will just fall over eventually.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the event. Finished 3-2, which was I was probably expecting a 2-3, 3-2 when I went.
Yeah.
So I kind of hit my target. Had all really close games and all really fun games.
Right. So next slide is about your lessons. So we've kind of touched on a bit of that, I suppose, with kind of as you were going through the games, but let's cover it, I guess.
We'll go quickly. So the general plan was to draw people into positions where I wanted to fight them and just absolutely punish them, which it seemed to work in almost everything except for demons, but that could have gone the other way. The OC2 jump pack intercessors were absolutely amazing, especially in the Custodes matchup, because you don't want to engage them. You can just drop 10 OC onto a point and screen them from coming at you and say, what are you going to do now? So the list was half built around them, but I didn't realize the absolute power of them and just controlling the game. +1 to wound with Oath, we've talked about. It just makes things punch so much harder than you would expect. The Lone Op Captain and Shrike were solo most games and were just scoring pieces, and the Captain just farmed me CP every couple of games. And the Incursors. So one of my biggest things out of this, I'm running 2 units of Incursors in every list, because when you can Oath something to get rerolls, and then you can shoot Incursors at other things to get +1 to hit, it's effectively having 2 Oaths. So you talked before about we've got the Lion at home for the CP farming. The Incursors, I've got Gilliman at home for a second Oath.
Nice.
Is kind of the way that I saw it.
Yeah.
So they are absolutely amazing. The Melter Mine, my perceived lack of anti-tank, which apparently isn't a thing, shores that up a little bit. And they can actually punch really well into MSU units. 15 attacks with sustained at 411 is actually no slouch.
No, especially if it's a T3 body, suddenly it becomes a question. Yeah.
It really does. They were just absolutely amazing. And putting them in a impulsor to scout forward, to throw them forward, and then come backwards to do your CP farming is quite funny.
So they literally got a taxi into the battle.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
That's it.
Right. So what would you change then?
So,
that's the question.
Like we said, the Reavers, they were all right. They're actually really good in the Demons game because they have lots of attacks.
Yeah.
And the -OC actually flipped to primary for a turn. But the Incursors are just more reliable. They do a little bit more of everything, not just one trick pony.
Yeah.
The Combi Lieutenant, for more scouts, just having some more bodies, I think, is better than having the Combi Lieutenant. I found he just doesn't have output.
Because if you've got 2 units of scouts, they can both get picked up, right?
There is, and I was finding
they can natively anyway.
Yeah, I was being so aggressive with my scouts because I was using them to try and create that space that my scouts were dead turn 2 almost every game.
Yeah,
and Shrike and the Captain were my scout proxies for most of the games. So a second unit of scouts, I think, would be really good. Or if we are going into full indirect meta as we think we are, with Bridgehead and everything, maybe a Phobos Librarian.
Make that Lone Op brick at the back for you. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, even the Phobos Librarian, I'm thinking about the Phobos Librarian in the Incursors, so they can just sit at the back and get
Yep.
farm out the +1
Yep.
to hit safely. The Plasma Inceptors for more tanks. So this one I'm not too sure about. They were my combat, but at the same
Yep.
time, I don't feel I needed it because I had so much OC. People had to come out anyway.
Yep.
And it's 240 points. That is
Almost 2 Predator Destructors, right?
It's 2 Predator Destructors or a Lancer and another Impulsor, and you can jangle things up. I think if you drop the Inceptors and the Combi Lieutenant, you get two Lancers or a Lancer and a Reaper.
Yeah.
So I might go that way. And I think the biggest thing for me is just getting reps because I made so many silly mistakes. I was quite slow in places, and it's just getting reps. And I actually really enjoyed playing it because it didn't sound like a 6-inch moving Marine army. It was, I'm going to come out, I'm going to hit you where I want, and I'm going to leave when you want to try and hit me back.
It's Power Armor Drakari, right?
It is. I wrote a list, and I've written other lists, and they've all turned into things with impulses. It's Power Armor Drakari. It's slightly more survival Drakari.
I can't complain because I'm the same. I basically do Orc War lists, but with Space Marines, so it's the same difference.
I wrote a Blood Angels list the other day, and it had 3 impulses and just MSU guys jumping out of it. I was like, oh, cool, this is Venoms, and this is...
How'd you get your pain tokens in this one, right?
I kept making people roll their leadership tests for Battle Shock when it didn't matter, because I was like, I get a pain token. Oh, wait, no, that doesn't matter now. It was really good. It was a really good outing, and a lot of fun. It was just fun. It was just having a Marine list that did jank and wasn't just pure power, which you see from all these Ultramarine lists. Because I look at you and I delete you. It felt like you had to play the game.
It then gives the option that if your playstyle isn't, I just want to bring a gun line, whether it's Ironstorm or an Ultramarines list that's just Gladius with a lot of big shooting, there is a way to play the game.
Yeah.
And also still succeed more than you don't, which I think is very telling. And I think this shows a good kind of result of the balanced data slate changes. Obviously, I think the Ultramarine stuff probably overwhelms it, but the fact that you can make something that is Ravenguard using the detachment that plays into their archetype is quite exciting.
It is, yeah. It is really cool. I'm definitely going to go back to it as well, I think. I did enjoy it.
I think you should. So the thing I learned when playing a list that does a thing quite skewy for Space Marines is the more games you've got into it, the more you get that little micro details, and you're like, well, actually, that unit, I'll put it back in. Like the Combi Lieutenant, you might suddenly find, actually, his reactive move and the strat reactive move, those two things with him can really cause him to go halfway across the board, that when you first play the list, you're like, he's just going to sit in that one place, isn't he? But no, he'll move the whole board, not in the movement phase. Cool.
Oh, lovely.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below what your favorite unit you would put in a Vanguard list is. And if it's not Phobos keyword, you may be wrong. For me, it's still Deathwing Knights, but I have a problem, guys. I cannot stop myself. And of course, if you really enjoyed it, don't forget you can become a YouTube member. We do weekly bonus videos for YouTube members, and there is things like coaching available to them as well. So, and of course, as Rob has put in this slide, we have a great, thriving Discord. There is a link below in the description. Join us and chat about Space Marine list tech with us. We're always really cool, kind of up to see cool new lists, especially when it's something a bit more unusual. Like if you just want to post another Ultramarines list, we probably will ignore you. But if it's something cool and exciting, maybe not Codex compliant, it'll be fine. But yeah,
show some Salamanders lists. I want to see Salamanders lists.
Yes, maybe with some Gravis.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Cool, man. Thank you for joining me, mate. When you get some more games in, let's touch base again, because I think it'll be really exciting to see the journey of how you want to be with your Raven Wing, Raven Guard.
It was my Dark Raven Angels Guard
of death. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.